Happy 2015, friends! Again, if you watched some of the videos that I released recently, I already greeted you Happy 2015 a couple of times, but hey, it's never too many times. The last couple of videos, in one I told you about my general gaming trends in 2014, in another one I covered my top 10 war games of 2014. And this year, for the first time, I'm making a video about my top 10 non-war games of the previous year, in this case being 2014. I'm often identified as the war game reviewer, with some reason of course, because I do play war games and I do review war games more than the average video reviewer. But I also like the types of games. In a sense, not strikingly different. Most of the games that I like that are not war games are still combat based, are still about struggle, about confrontation, much more than they are about clean, terse, financial mechanics, about numbers, about investment. I like some of those too, but I like adventure and conflict based games much more. And this year I played so many good games that are not strictly speaking war games that I felt the need to tell you a little bit about these games. I also feel that I played more of these games in the last year. I haven't counted the exact number of which type of game that I played in the last year, but just had the impression that I played a lot of non-war games and a lot of good ones. Again, it's not exactly a new thing if you think that the very first video review that I ever filmed was for the game Tomb, a fantasy game by AG. But maybe because of Gen Con, I picked up so many games, so in the last couple of months after Gen Con I played a lot of those, and those are mainly non-war games. Maybe because of that, but this year really had this intense desire of sharing my preferences about the war games, about the non-war games. So Freudian, so Freudian. My preferences about the non-war games that I played in 2014. There is at least one game that is not from 2014, but I played it for the first time in 2014, so it'll be part of my top 10. Number 10. Again, when I say number 10, is like, I said this in my video for war games too. It looks like, ooh, is the worst one. Is the worst one? No, it's the bottom tier of the top 10. Everything else is under there. It's good. It means that I like this game very much. And it is Space Hulk, the new edition that came out a couple of months ago. I was able to pre-order a copy when Joel told me that a new edition was coming out. I was very happy to do this. I had played the game in the past with a copy of a friend, and I had considered buying a copy for a long time, but the prices on the market of used games were insane, way over $100 for copies that were pretty battered and in bad shape. $200 for an average copy, a little too much. But I like the game, so occasionally I would play it with a friend, just knowing that the game would never be reprinted again. That was the official position of the publisher until they publish it again. So I was very happy to pick up a copy. If you have a chance, the next time this game is going to be reprinted, it's never going to be reprinted. Never, ever. There's not a chance. But when it is reprinted, pick up a copy, because it is a fun combat game. You probably know it. It's such a popular and well-known game. Just in case, it is a sci-fi game of combat in which you have one side playing the Space Marines and the other side playing ugly, manic monsters. And the two sides play completely differently. They meet together in a claustrophobic environment. The Marines are trying to accomplish missions. The aliens are trying to eat the Marines, or in any case to turn them into tartar. What I like about this game is the completely non-symmetrical gameplay. The Marines are strong, they have powerful, mighty weapons, they blow stuff up, but they're pretty slow, they're not agile, they have these wonderful armors, which are incidentally completely useless, because if the aliens get close to them, They're just gonna open these armors as if they were a can of tuna. Completely useless. All that these armors do is to hinder the movement of the Marines and to make it more challenging. So the Marine player has the challenge of figuring out how to move his Marines, not to get them in each other's way, not to get stuck, as the alien player pours in all sorts of monsters. Simple mechanics, but they result in a very tense narrative and very exciting moments, a lot of scenarios to play. Definitely a good product. I like it. Space Hulk, number 10 of my mainly combat-based games, but non-war games that I enjoyed in 2014. Number 9, probably the only pure Euro game in this top 10, it is Splendor. I said I don't play many pure terse non-war games that are about trading and stuff like that. And this one I actually picked up by mistake. I saw it in my friendly local game store. I saw the cover and I believe it was a game about wizards. There is this old guy, actually I have a copy here. It's hard for me to show the games in my videos this year because the games are all around the house because of the mess caused by ongoing project Gamercade, but this one I happen to have it here. I really believe that this guy was a wizard. I saw it and I was like, ooh, there's a wizard. Then you have the stereotypical, I don't know, princess. Then you have a guy who looks like he's a scheming guy. I thought it was going to be like a Game of Thrones fantasy game of magic, intrigue. And I picked it up. I was like, what? The trading gems in the Renaissance? So whatever. I decided to give it a try. And I'm so glad I mistook that game for a fantasy game. That is one of the games that I usually tend to play most often. Because I like it. I like it a lot. This is a game that plays in about 20 minutes. It has incredibly simple mechanics. It is the purest... a game based on the purest investment system that you can have. You buy something small, so you can buy something a little bigger, which allows you to buy something a little bigger, which allows you to buy something a little bigger. And there isn't really much more. If you buy bigger stuff in a certain order, you create a certain set of big stuff, then you can recruit the services, or you can attract a very powerful noble that gives you more points. But it is still just a variant of buy big stuff to get bigger stuff, which is what I usually don't like at all. But somehow this is handled so well in such a clean, neat, intuitive way. The pace of the game is good. The choices are not too many, so you don't feel overwhelmed by them. But they do feel very meaningful. And what I really like is that you're not just playing your multiplayer solo, because there's a limited number of changing resources. The resources that you purchase, so you can purchase more resources later, are cards on the table, and if people buy them, if people reserve them, then those are replaced. So sure, you could play the game multiplayer solo, just trying to get what you need, but if there are other players that are playing their own strategy and trying to prevent you from accomplishing your objectives, they're gonna win. So it is desirable, in a sense it is expected, that you do take into account what other players are doing. Both so that you prevent pursuing the same objectives, and then that the player may get the things that you need, and also so that you can actively work against the other players, trying to slow them down as they are on their way to victory, and so that you can retain advantage as you are working your way to victory. Splendor, not a fantasy game, but a very pleasant surprise. A pure serendipity. Doesn't get any more serendipitous than this. Then number 8 is Lost Legacy. Lost Legacy by AEG. This is an augmented version of Love Letter, a variant, but a variant that I find so superior that to me has pretty much sent Love Letter to retirement. 2 sets came out, each set with less than 20 cards. They're called Lost Legacy Starship and Lost Legacy Flying Garden. You can play separately, but they're not both very good if you play them individually. When they really shine, and actually only recently decided to play the game this way, is when you play the Mega Mix version, which is when you shuffle the cards together and you form a single deck. If you play Love Letter, you will know the mechanics of this game. The idea is that there is a common deck, players have a hand of one card, you draw a card, you play a card in front of you, resolving the effects, so that at the end of a turn you're left with a hand of one card. These cards create effects that allow you to eliminate other players, to look at other players' cards, to manipulate the hands of other cards, the order of the deck. The point is that, like in Love Letter, there is a card in the game which is particularly valuable. It is the victory card, and if at the end of the game, in Love Letter, if you own that card, you win the game. In this game, you win if you figure out where that card is. Another variant here is that at the beginning of the game you draw a card from the deck face down, and you place it face down by the main draw deck, and that forms the initial part of the Ruins. It is simply a game area that is called the Ruins, so you know that when there is a game effect that says put a card in the Ruins, take a card from the Ruins, look at the cards in the Ruins, shuffle the cards in the Ruins, you know what the game effect is referring to. Thematically speaking, you don't feel much like that is different from anywhere else in the board. Another interesting twist is that cards are numbered from 1 to 8. At the end of the game, well, if a player eliminates everybody else, the last player standing is the winner of the game, even if the deck hasn't run out. If more than one player is still alive at the end of the game, then you move on to the investigation phase, and players will investigate in ascending order based on the number on their cards. The player that has a card with a number 1 will go to investigate first, then number 2, then number 3, number 4, and so on and so forth. Which means that towards the end of the game you will want to keep in your hand a card with a low number, but those cards are sometimes dangerous to keep in your hand, so it's kind of tricky. You have to switch towards the second half of the game strategy to try to get a card with a lower number, as cards with higher numbers may be more powerful early on in the game. And when you're investigating, you simply get a shot at identifying where the Lost Legacy is. You can point to another player, and because the Lost Legacy can be in the hand of a player, it can be in the Ruins, and maybe you say it's in the Ruins, and then there are multiple cards. You have to show which one you think is the Lost Legacy. Maybe you have it in your hand, and if you have it in your hand when it is your turn to investigate, then you show it. Either you have it and you get to show it, or you identify where it is under the player's hands or in the Ruins, you win the game. If you made a mistake, then you just wasted your investigation phase, and another player gets a chance to investigate and try to figure out where the Lost Legacy card is. It's great, it's a great game, it plays in less than 10 minutes. The interconnection of the effects is phenomenal. It creates a lot of interesting situations, a lot of interesting interactions, bluffing, deduction. You have to try to figure out what the opponents may have in their hand, because there are cards that if you look at them, they will eliminate you. On the other hand, if you had the right card and you get to look at that player's card, with that card that you have, that effect, certain combination with certain cards will eliminate the opponent. There are risks to be taken. There is the deduction element, there is the bluffing element. Maybe I want you to look at my card because that would allow me to eliminate you because of the specific effect on my card. It's a great game. I enjoyed it when I originally picked it up and I played a single set. Mixing the cards together makes the game a little longer, which means it plays in 10 minutes instead of 5. It is like a quick filler. Insanely addictive, just like Love Letter. You will find yourself playing a game after the other. They end in very different ways. They may end in different ways. Players may eliminate each other because of different chains of effects. You may find the Lost Legacy or not. unbelievable variety that will come from what even in the Mega Mix version is a very lean deck of cards. Lost Legacy, absolutely adorable, enjoyable game. It's a filler, but it's meatier and more rewarding than your average filler. Number 7, Age of Conan, a game of warfare and fantasy adventure and conquest. I'd heard a lot of complaint about this game because you cannot be Conan in this game. So what? You may play a game that has Game of Thrones in the title and you don't get to be Ned Stark. It happens. In this game, players represent nations in the fantasy world of Conan, and they're trying to expand and to pretty much conquer each other. You can't exactly take control of the capital of an opponent, but you can isolate the opponent because you score points and you win the game by controlling areas and by building your cities and your fortresses, just by getting relative domination in the land. There's also an alternate way of ending the game in which you can follow a procedure, and if you have a certain type of resources, you can manage to elect Conan as the king, and if you're the player that managed to elect the new king, then you win the game. What I like about this game is that it has a lot of layers to it. It has the warfare element, which I really much enjoy, and it's a warfare element in which there is a strong tactical sense. You have this map that represents a world from a distance, from way above, sort of like, quote-unquote, the scale almost of a Risk map, that kind of map. Also, it's pretty abstract, it's fantasy, it doesn't give you the sense of an historical war game, and why should it? So you have this sort of gamey, gamey appearance of the game, and sort of very broad scope. When you get to resolve in battle, you have so many effects, so many ways in which you can manipulate the dice that you get to roll, the type of dice, the number of dice. You may make temporary alliances with Conan. Conan is a non-playing character that the players can influence but not exactly control, which to me makes sense. The guy is mercurial in nature and he does his own thing, he goes his own way. You may get him to get detours from what he's trying to accomplish, but you don't get to control Conan. To me, actually, that makes much more sense than if you could control Conan. So when you get to resolve battle, you have a very tactical feel to it. But at the same time, there's all the civilization aspect, I would say the 4X aspect, because you need to build cities, you need to put together your resources, you need to build your army, you need to find ways of giving yourself advantages during the tactical aspect. There are other types of ways of scoring points if you meet certain conditions that will change throughout the game. For example, if you have to play with the most ports, or if you control a certain region. Just many ways in which you can score points, many ways in which you can go about things. That really gives you the sense of a multi-layered, rich and complex fantasy experience. I do not know exactly that this is a war game, or even that the war game component is all that big, even though you're fighting so much. But I would say it has part war game, fantasy war game, part civilization, part adventure. So it has them all. It has them all. Conan, Age of Conan, just the basic game is already good. If you had problems with the original game, some of the problems that early players complained about, there is a new expansion, the one that was on Kickstarter, that fixes those. So the game, to me, was good already. I really enjoyed it originally. With the new expansion, I think it gives you more options to play it. But it is overall a very, very good game. And probably not as well known as it should. I don't know that it achieved the status of classic, or minor classic at least, that I believe it deserves. A game that is fairly similar overall, if nothing else because it is from the same publisher. Actually, come to think of it, that's probably the main similarity. It is a Battle of the Five Armies by Ares. I picked this up at Gen Con 2015. It is inspired by The Hobbit, the novel. It is hard not to see here, of course, an attempt on capitalizing on the notoriety of the book that the book has had since it came out some decades ago, and also the increased notoriety given to the franchise by the recent movies. Nevertheless, who cares? If the game is good, I don't care if it's a little bit of exploitation of popularity due to movies or not. I care that the game is good, and this game is very good. It depicts, well, guess what? The Battle of Five Armies from the Hobbit. So you have these five armies that play in very different ways, and they are divided between the players. And then you have armies that specialize in long-range attacks, that have powerful magic, that have bows and arrows. Then you have the ugly orcs and the goblins and all the other little critters of the evil player that will come and try to take control of the area where the battle takes place. And you have characters, you have heroes that have very important roles. I find that actually one of the most fascinating things in this design is that there is a good balance between the army aspect, in which you raise troops, you move troops, etc., etc., and yet the individual aspect of some of the heroes that will give you specific advantages. To me, this is actually a very good way of capturing the feel of a lot of good fantasy prose or fantasy narratives, in which indeed you need to have the sense of a collective experience to be engaged, to get the sense that the world is a real one full of characters, and yet when you have a hero or some other heroes that are of particular interest that stand out from the crowd. Very good combination that you have in traditional fantasy, a very good way of representing that in this game. The game also has a system to resolve events, a system that will allow you to manipulate, to control to a degree the schedule of the arrival of the heroes, which benefit the good players, the evil players trying to delay the arrival of the big powerful heroes of the good guy, of the good side. Lot going on. Again, this is pretty much a battle, yes. The scope doesn't have that civilization aspect that you have in Age of Conan, yet the mechanics are a little abstract, not what you traditionally see in war games, and there are just so many of these other aspects that try to capture different sides, different angles of the battle, that it's a game that is heavy on combat, but doesn't feel exactly like a war game, which is why I feel that it belongs in this video here rather than in my top 10 war games. But it's great, and actually when you do resolve combat, this game also, similarly to what you have in Conan, does have a strong tactical feel, a lot of tactical options, cards that you play to generate certain effects, to give yourself certain bonuses, to prevent the opponent from performing certain maneuvers. You can keep some of your people in reserve, just a lot of things that can happen. Again, you do get the sense that you're looking at the broader picture, then zooming in to resolve combat, then back to the broader picture. Not as extremely, not in as extreme a fashion as you have in Age of Conan, but in a similar way. Battle of the Five Armies by Ars Games, picked up at Gen Con 2014 and definitely enjoyed it. What happened? Where are we? Oh my gosh, I think we teleported to another mysterious place. All this talk about magic does this kind of stuff. Or maybe we were transported here by dragons, because that would be a very nice introduction to the next game, which is number 5 in my top 10 non-war games of 2014. That is Game of Thrones, the board game. You're like, what? Did you just get there after all this time? Yes, I'm late to the party. The game has been around for a while. It has gone through several editions. Finally, in 2014, I got to play it. I loved it immensely. Unfortunately, I don't get to play nearly as often as I'd like, because it takes a specific number of players to really shine, to really give you all that it has to offer. Also, in my group, it seems that we take more time to play than most groups. I shared my concerns about the game being pretty long, Not that I mind in terms of my experience. I'm okay sitting around the table and playing an engaging game for several hours, for 5 or 6. It just seems that everybody that I shared this with online comments, oh my gosh, it's crazy, the game takes much less. I don't know, that's how long it takes us, 5-6 hours, easy. Maybe we're more scheming, more diplomatic, maybe we do the Game of Thrones thing more than that people do. We spend more time making deals, just to break them the next minute, of course. I don't know. So one negative thing is that I don't get to play the game very often, but that has nothing to do with the game really. The game is fine. It is inspired by the Game of Thrones. Interesting enough, at the time in which I played the game, I didn't know much about Game of Thrones, about the Song of Ice and Fire. At the time, I'd seen some of the TV shows. Only after playing the game did I start reading the novels, and I really enjoyed them. I just finished reading A Dance with Dragons a couple of days ago, and I want to go back to play the game. I'm sure that now I know the characters better, and I would have a completely different appreciation of the game. As is, the game is really immersive. A really immersive expansion war game diplomacy type of game in which players represent houses of the Seven Kingdoms in the universe created by J.R.R. Martin, and they do what the houses do in the TV show and in the novels. They fight each other. They try to grab as much land as they can. They try to grab resources, and the game factors in resources that fluctuate, and players have to place bids in order to gain certain advantages, to put their markers on certain tracks, and depending on the position of the markers on the track, they will get certain advantages rather than others. They will get to break certain ties. It's a great game, and take this for somebody who played the game without being a fan of the fantasy franchise behind it. Somebody who just playing it the way I would play any game about a subject that I don't know, that was just created for a specific game, so that players do not necessarily have an emotional attachment to the universe depicted before. So as is, the game is absolutely enjoyable, very immersive, tons of decisions, very deep, pretty complex, not for the completely casual gamer. A war gamer shouldn't have too much trouble getting into the game, but definitely a great game. Game of Thrones, the board game. I'm late to the party, but I'm really glad that I joined this party. Then number 4, Legendary, but not the basic Legendary game, which is an okay game. I enjoyed it. It's a deck building game with Marvel superheroes. I love Marvel. I love superheroes in general. It has a couple of interesting tweaks on the deck building game, but the one version of the game that I really like, and it's number 4 for my top 10 best non-Wargames of 2014, is Legendary Encounters. That was released, I believe, at Gen Con. I picked it up soon after Gen Con, and it is a real achievement in the world of deck building games. We have seen many of those. There are tweaks and twists around the basic engine. Some innovate more and some less. This is a really innovative take on the deck building engine, because it adds something that I had not seen before, which is a very strong narrative feel. Even games like A Few Acres of Snow that try to do that, to give you a landscape with a story and deck building, did not achieve as much as this one does. This is set in the world of Alien, the franchise, of the movies. It has 4, I would call them basic scenarios, meaning you can set up the game to follow one of 4 movies in the franchise. And it's incredible how you have this abstract idea of the deck building. You're getting resources, shuffling them together. You have no idea when the cards are coming back. And yet the board presents you with challenges, because cards of the enemies will come out more or less in a certain sequence, presenting you with different problems. It is not like, say, in Thunderstone, in which you always have to do the same thing, get together some strength, get some light, go and kill the monsters. One time you have to defuse a bomb, one time you have to save somebody, one time you have to do something else. And the story progresses towards harder and harder encounters. Great. It really is a deck building game, which is a fun engine to me, is a fun mechanic with a strong sense of story. It really gives a sense of the stories, of the narratives that you find in the movies. You can even experiment by mixing and matching things from movie to movie, different elements. That probably would sound a little too weird to me, but as is with 4 movies that you can play and experiment with, I think you already have a lot of variety, a lot of fun, a lot of replay value with the stuff that you find in this game. Legendary encounters. No one can hear you when you shuffle your cards in space. That's the basic idea of the game. Number 3, a game that I played very recently, and actually I feel kind of cheating a little bit because I played it at the very beginning of 2015. Whatever, I'm going to talk about it right now because I like it so much. I can't wait until next year. Shadows of Malice, my review came out a couple of days ago. Shadows of Malice is a fantasy game with an adventure component, exploration component, RPG component, and it's incredibly innovative. It's hard to find a game that is this innovative in the very well known and charted territory of fantasy gaming. To describe what's unique about this game, I'll borrow a comment that I've read on Board Game Geek on one of my video reviews. I'm sorry, I don't remember right now who posted that comment, but somebody, one of the users of Board Game Geek, says that the game takes advantage of the player's brain. That is, it encourages to use your imagination to flesh out the story, to fill in the gaps, to enrich the theme. Which, of course, is something that seems very easy. I could just write here a word like dragon or goblin and then tell you, okay, now is your job. Figure it out. Imagine. That wouldn't be all that exciting. But this game gives you enough theme and enough narrative components that triggers your imagination. It is a fantasy world in which you do some of the classical things you do in fantasy adventure games. You travel, you get stronger, you acquire magical items, you fight against monsters. But there is a generator of encounters that I had not seen in other games, in which you roll on a table and you build different monsters from time to time. From encounter to encounter, you will build different monsters. So it is unlikely they will encounter the same monster twice. There are hundreds, probably thousands of monsters that are possible thanks to that matrix that you use to generate monsters. You can get all sorts of crazy encounters, and you have enough special abilities, special traits that these monsters will acquire that allows you to create a powerful image in your mind. Because of this, you would need hundreds or thousands of illustrations to have a card for each monster, but the game allows you to do that with the power of your imagination. There aren't many illustrations, it's mainly text, but that text is very evocative. The ideas, the images that the text creates is so powerful. So it's a board game that gives you an experience that is very similar to that of an RPG, with a fraction of the complexity that you have in many RPGs. It's a fully cooperative game, so you can also play it solitary. It plays very well that way. The story is very strong. Even though it seems, again, obvious, is metaphysical good versus metaphysical evil. The heroes are manifestations of the metaphysical good, avatars that take physical shape to prevent the world from being completely devastated by manifestations, physical manifestations of the metaphysical evil that comes in the form of shadows and tries then to open gates that will allow the giant Cthulhu version, Cthulhu wannabe that you have in this game. When you have these giant monstrous manifestations of evil, you know the Cthulhu is in the air. The name of the demon in this game is also similar to Cthulhu, something like Sultul. It sounds like somebody who has heard the name Cthulhu, maybe in this fantasy world, they also have heard some distorted version of H.P. Lovecraft stories, and they have named their monster after that. But I digress. The point is that the game has a strong story. The heroes start as weak, not particularly strong. They level up, they have encounters, adventures, they hire mystics to brew potions for them and use these potions as powerful molotovs. Crazy action, strong narrative, a lot of theme. And it's a theme that feels so vivid, so powerful, because it doesn't stay just there before your very eyes in a maybe beautiful illustration like you would have in other games. It is triggered by the game in your imagination with the kind of richness and detail that you have in RPGs. Shadows of Malice is a great combination, a great hybrid of board game, adventure game, and RPG, and frankly, it's just so innovative and refreshing. It's such a new take on fantasy gaming. I love it. Number two is a game by GMT. OMGNT. People that watch my videos for the best war games already have heard about a lot of games by GMT. I really like the games of this publisher, and then even the non-war games that they publish are usually very good. This year they published one which is absolutely excellent. Thunder Alley, which is a game about NASCAR. Game of Thrones, I didn't know the topic, but it's fantasy, something I like. Here's about racing games, which I usually don't like. NASCAR, that I know absolutely nothing about. I didn't know what to expect from this game. I said, let's give it a try. Love it. It's number 2 of this year. It's my second favorite game of 2014. Good job, GMT. You managed to sneak in even in my videos for non-Wargames. This is a racing game. It's a card-driven racing game. You're given a hand of cards and you have a team of cars that you're leading. You're not a single pilot. And what is really fantastic about this game is the incredible organic feel that you have. You really have the sense that the track on which you're racing is sort of like a tunnel full of wind, and you're manipulating the current because the cars are constantly trying to exploit each other's momentum, trying to get into big columns to increase each other's performance, and you're trying to sneak into columns of other players in order that you can move when they move. Your cars will allow you to activate one of your cars and to move it, but then cars, depending on the position and the card that you played, can also very often link with other cars. And that's what you're trying to do, of course, to link as many of your cars as you can through the play of a single card, so that you can move a lot of your units with a single card, and then you play another card, and again, you have maximized your hand. Of course, the opponent is trying to do the same, and to prevent you from doing the same, probably to parasitically trying to place his cards in certain positions so that his cars will also benefit. Maybe for the entire turn, the cars of the opponent have been dragged by your cars, and then at the end the opponent comes out with a quick move and gains a superior position. It's a great game because there's so much interaction. You can expect that in games, in racing games. I'm getting in front of you, and I'm blocking you from passing me. Well, here, being in front of people is not always all that great, because they may exploit you by getting behind you and getting an advantage because they're following you. So you have a lot of interaction when it comes to the cars of your team, and you have a lot of interaction between teams, because very often players will make deals and agreements and alliances just to break them later. As in all games that have alliances, the best player is the one who makes a lot and doesn't follow through with many. That is able to get the maximum advantage from a deal without giving much to the opponent. It may not sound nice, but that's how you win games. And in this game, it's a racing game in which you have a little bit of a diplomatic game. It's surprising. You can imagine the team managers that are radioing each other, so, okay, my cars are going to help you yours, but then yours are going to help mine, and that guy's like, yeah, sure, right, I'm going to help you later. Oop, sorry, somebody's calling me. Another change of scenery. Sorry if this video comes across as a little choppier than I like it to be. This is the beginning of the semester. I'm trying to film this whenever I find a little bit of time. Things happen. But one way or the other, bit after bit, we are getting closer to number one. Number two, Thunder Alley by GMT, a race game that has a card-driven component, a lot of interaction, and even a diplomatic aspect. I think it's really an innovative take on the race game genre, even though I may be saying something completely wrong here because I'm not the biggest expert. It feels pretty novel and innovative to me. It definitely felt fresh and exciting. It plays well with any number. You can play with 2 players or 7 players. It plays very differently, but it does work. So, Thunder Alley, excellent game, number 2 of my 10 best non-war games of 2014. And what is number 1? Number 1 is a game that I like so much that actually is one of the reasons why this video exists. After playing this game, which is not a war game, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I need to somehow acknowledge this in some extra way. A review is not enough. I'm gonna make a video at the end of the year so I can include this one. What is this game? You may know it if you've followed my videos in the last year. This game is Shadows of Brimstone. Came out around Gen Con. Some copies were out. They were trying to make a splash. I picked up a copy there. I had not backed it on Kickstarter. I picked up a copy there because I wanted to play it. I picked up a copy of one of the 2 sets, City of the Ancients, and I liked it so much that then I found somebody that allowed me to piggyback their Kickstarter, so I could get all the extra stuff, the other set, and all the Kickstarter exclusives. But I haven't played Swamps of Death yet, which is the other set. I would love to, but as I think I said earlier, my house is a mess these days because games are everywhere. The basement is being redone. All the stuff that is in the basement is everywhere else in the house. I don't have much room to set up a game that large and to leave it set up there for a while, because once I play it again, I want to play a campaign. I want to play for a while. I want to really get the joy of an immersive experience in this game. It is at the core a dungeon crawler, but with a very original setting. It is set in the old Far West, the American Far West, so you have some of the tropes and stereotypical figures of the Far West. You have the sheriff, the marshal with the shotgun, the bandito, you have the saloon dancer, the gunslinger. But then the twist is that you have Lovecraftian horror creeping into our reality, which I think is great. If Lovecraft is to be trusted as true and accurate, which is, then the Cthulhian horrors have been around since the dawn of time, even though Lovecraft tends to tell us about people in the 20s and the 30s of the 20th century that experienced that. It is not unlikely that people had some brush with weird slimy tentacles coming out from interdimensional portals. Makes perfect sense. The horror was there, and now you have these characters in the Old West that are clashing against these monsters. They're going down a mine, exploring, accomplishing missions. They may find themselves teleported on the other side of a strange interdimensional gate in the City of the Ancients, in another dimension, cold and scary with different rules and bigger monsters. I think it's absolutely great setting. With a setting this great, I'm almost thinking it would really be hard to mess it mechanically. It'd be possible, but luckily enough, this game doesn't do that. Luckily enough, this game really has some sound mechanics. It is fully cooperative, again, wonderful because perfectly friendly to the solitaire gamer. There is an AI that controls the monsters. The map is revealed as you explore, and you build it in a modular fashion, so the map will change from game to game. I've heard some people not liking too much the combat resolution because sometimes you're surrounded by a lot of big monsters and you have to roll a lot to resolve that. I never had a problem with that. I like that sense of tension of being overwhelmed by monsters coming out of anywhere. And also something that you can do that really makes the game exciting is to use the environment creatively. I remember a game in which there was this big demon following my heroes, and we went to a room of the mine that was full of explosives, and so the heroes started throwing dynamites at the dynamites at risk of their lives getting damaged to blowing up the room to inflict damage on the monster in a pretty much calculated suicidal fashion, or at least trying to make it in such a way that it would inflict damage on the demon without being completely destroyed. Similar things, you have powerful weapons, and if you figure out the right time to use them against crowds of enemies, not only does that advantage you from the tactical point of view, you get a better chances of survival, but also speeds up things because you get rid of a bunch of enemies. So yes, there are some large encounters in which the procedures, the rolling may take a little bit, may slow down things, but frankly, I still felt that created tension was part of the overarching narrative. What is also great is that you really have the sense that the dungeon is not just floating in empty space, it is a synecdoche for a larger world, because when you have accomplished your mission, then you travel to the town, which is a little more abstract part of the game, but still not just a list of items that you buy and a list of upgrades that you purchase. There is that part too, but there are events that happen in the town. Different characters will interact with the town buildings in different ways. There are random events. You go to the doctor, and turns out that the doctor has been corrupted by the darkness, and he's performing strange experiments on people in the village. And when you're traveling to the town, is not necessarily there's a little bit of a break from the mind, but there may still be some pretty horrendous stuff and horrific things waiting there. You can modify your weapons by sort of like imbuing them with the energy of darkness. A lot of great stuff. You can level up. There is a tree of abilities that you gain as you level up. Similarly to what happens in Shadows of Malice, this is a game that has a component of board game and a component of RPG and can be played in solitaire. I guess this is a blend of things that I really like, because this description applies to two of my favorite games of last year. As opposed to Shadows of Malice, to me, Shadows of Brimstone is superior, is one or two notches above, because of the larger campaign sense. In Shadow of Malice, you are playing an adventure. At that next game, you will start over. In Shadows of Brimstone, you have a larger world to explore, a deeper narrative, I would say broader narrative, with more options, more scenarios, characters that may grow from campaign to campaign. Once you're done with a campaign, you start the same campaign, same scenarios, with the same heroes. You level them up differently by giving them different abilities, and right there already you have a different situation. The replay value of Shadows of Brimstone is immense. The one of Shadows of Malice is huge. This one is just off the charts. Beautiful components, beautiful miniatures. I haven't painted mine because I don't know how to do that. I am manually impaired that way. But even just unpainted miniatures, they create a strong atmosphere. They interact with other beautiful components. A game that looks beautiful, plays well, plays smoothly, is exciting in every moment in which you're playing, and it is exciting in the broader sense of the narrative. At all levels of the narrative, from a single encounter, a single exploration, a campaign, there is something good and fun happening in the world of Shadows of Brimstone. I definitely look forward to finally having the opportunity to play the second set, and also to get the extra Kickstarter rewards that haven't been released yet. They are scheduled for next summer. I really look forward to those. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my first video of my favorite non-war games of the year. first of many. I don't know, let me know what you think. I hope you found it useful, even though I'm a little more of an occasional player of non-wargames than I am of other types of games, and clearly there's a specific type of game that I like. As you can see, my selection is pretty idiosyncratic. Other video reviewers will probably have dramatically different selections, but this is mine. If you watch my videos, you know the stuff that I like, so you know that I'm not objectively telling you these are the good games, these are the bad games. You know what I like, and you know if I like the same things that you do. In that sense, this video and my reviews in general may give an indication of things that you may like or not like. Maybe you and I have completely opposite taste in games. That would be still pretty useful. Now you know the games to avoid, what probably would be the worst games of 2014 for you. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great 2015. There's a great hobby that we share, the hobby of gaming. Keep it up. I think we live in a golden age of gaming. It is exciting to be part of this ever-growing hobby, ever-growing community, and well, I'm happy to be part of this community, and I'm happy to be here sharing my impressions and opinions with you. Ciao, and again, happy 2015.